being afraid to die, is a very alienating belief. I've been afraid of death for about as long as I can remember. I remember my earliest memory of me being afraid of death was before I even first went to kindergarten. I remember I was in my bed and my dad was reading me a story from the Bible. I don't specifically remember what story he read to me, but I remember he was reading me a story from the Bible. And in that story, a character died. And I remember I asked my dad, what happens after death? What happens after you die? And then my dad had told me, that's it. Everything fades to black, everything fades to nothingness, and you're gone. You don't see anything. It's really interesting when I think about it in hindsight because my dad was a devout Christian, but yet he described death as the eternal nothingness, the eternal void, the way that a lot of atheists view death. And I remember when he described it like that to me, I cried. And I cried and I said to my dad, I don't want to die. I said I don't want to die and I cried and he just told me it happens to everyone. I'm going to have to get over it. And then he got up, left me on the bed crying, and I cried all night. I didn't sleep at all. I was scared. I was like 3 or 4, but I was afraid that if I slept, I would never wake up. And ever since then, I've had a fear of death that lingers in the background of my life. I don't think about it constantly, but I think about it enough that it has caused me a lot of stress and anxiety in my life. It's scary and it's really alienating because this is a fear that I cannot relate to a lot of people about. When you're afraid of like social scenarios, that's like a relatable fear, right? Oh, everyone's afraid of like going out in public and embarrassing themselves and saying something embarrassing and making a fool of themselves. But what I realize is even though death is a fate that every single person who's alive right now will eventually share with me, I realize the fear of that is not shared by everyone. Some people have religion, and if you have religious beliefs and you believe in an afterlife, you truly have no reason to fear death because honestly, the way religion describes death, it sounds like a paradise. And in a lot of ways, I'm really jealous because it's weird. I was raised as a Christian, but I never, even as a child, I never believed in religion. Even as a child, when I was like 5 and 6, the concept of God just didn't make sense to me and I didn't believe it. It's not like being atheist was almost like just the natural nature of the way my mind worked. It's not like I intentionally studied religion and decided that I wanted to be an atheist later in life. Like I was in elementary school and I did not believe that God existed. I always felt like it was a curse because I had always thought, man, this fear, this crippling fear I have of death, I would be free of if I believed in an afterlife like everyone else did. If I believed that post-death was not nothing, if I believed that there was something waiting for me after death, I would truly have nothing to fear. And even if there was nothing after death, I mean, I would reach nothingness and I would die happy because I believe I was going to heaven. I always thought the fact that I didn't and couldn't believe in a religion was crippling. So much so that I've even considered raising my own kids as religious just so they don't have to suffer from the way I've suffered from this fear. I've had so many panic attacks constantly of if I'm almost asleep and I just think about what if I close my eyes and never wake up, and I've had panic attacks. I've had panic attacks where I'm doing something and then I just randomly think about, I have an intrusive thought, oh, I'm going to die one day and everything's going to be gone, and I freak the fuck out. I'll be having a fight with my partner and then I'll think about eventually how I'm going to die and nothing's going to matter. And I will kiss and hug my partner and I will say, I don't want to fight. I care about you. I want to be as happy as I can in the now. Now that's a good thing, but it's a good thing that comes at the cost of suffering. And it's very alienating having this because this is not a fear that I can relate to a lot of people about. This is not something that like when I open up to people, other people can like, oh, I share that fear. A lot of people more times than not tell me that they don't have this fear. This is not a common fear. There's a fear of death subreddit, and it is not a very popular subreddit. It's not an active subreddit, and quite frankly, I can't frequent that subreddit because it often triggers my anxiety. It's a big trigger because people that comment and make posts in that subreddit are often people that are really going through hard times with this fear of death. This has felt like a lonely fear for me. A very lonely fear, because it's a fear that I truly don't relate to a lot of people about. I've never met anyone in my personal life that also tells me, yeah, I'm afraid to die. Most people I meet are very indifferent on the idea of death. And it makes me feel weird. I'm like, am I the only person who's afraid of non-existence, who's afraid of how meaningless life can be in the grand scheme of things if death is an eternal nothingness? It's lonely. It's a lonely existence because it feels like I'm the only one that's suffering like this. And it really makes me sad because I truly do want somebody to relate to about this fear of death, but it's not the same on the internet. I don't know. The internet connections that you form are never the same as when you meet people in real life. And like, the fear of death is crazy because like, if you're afraid of dying, what can you do about it? I've always been a very logical person. And what I mean by that is I take like a very logical problem solving approach to the problems that I go through in my life. I had social anxiety at one point in my life, crippling social anxiety. And the way I fixed it was I had thought to myself, okay, I have a lot of social anxiety. And at first, my first way to tackle that problem, because I saw it as like a problem to be solved, was to gather data. To start doing the things that I'm afraid of to see if the outcomes were, if my mind was correct. And then I gathered data and I proved that my fears were not coming true. But when you have a fear of death, like, how do you solve that problem? The only way to solve that problem is to accept it. And I don't want to accept death. If I could be immortal, I would be immortal. I don't want to die. And it's like, if you truly just don't want to die, the only option you have is to either be afraid your entire life or accept it. And I don't want to accept death. Even people on the internet that like are striving for immortality, like Brian Johnson. I love Brian Johnson. He's one of my favorite content creators who preaches don't die, and he focuses on healthy research on how to extend your lifespan. He's not even afraid to die himself. I've listened to his interviews and he said, I'm not afraid to die. I just don't want to die. It's very alienating to really have to feel like, it almost makes you feel like you're crazy. Everyone's just like, yeah, it happens. We're going to die, whatever. And then you're just sitting here like, that doesn't scare you. I've even met atheists that it doesn't scare. And I always think about how life is really so short, how this could be the one opportunity that we have to truly be conscious. And I work like 80 hours a week. I'm miserable. I have no time to do the things that make me happy, the passions that I love. It almost really makes life feel meaningless because the majority of the time I'm even alive in the first place. It's like, it's not even fun. It's like we get such a limited time to even exist, to experience anything. And that limited time, most of it is spent working and doing things that we frankly just don't enjoy. It really makes existence seem like it sucks to me. I really don't enjoy it. I remember I went to see a therapist about this issue. I went to see a therapist and to try to get this issue addressed because around the time of my 21st birthday, I always have insane panic attacks around my birthday when it comes to my crippling fear of death. That's where it comes back the most. I think it's because when it's your birthday, you're really aware of the fact that you are aging. And so every time my birthday comes around, the crippling fear comes back really, really intensely. And around my 21st birthday, I had told myself, I need to get something done about this. I was hopeful that I could find a way to solve it. And I remember going to a therapist to try to get this issue addressed. And it felt even more alienating. And I don't think the therapist was a bad one. I just think it wasn't a good fit for me because I felt really judged. Because I remember telling him, like, yeah, I'm afraid to die. And he was like, huh, that's really strange. He was like, I'm really old, but I'm not afraid to die. And I think he was just trying to express curiosity, but for me, it felt judge. It felt like judgment. It felt like, huh, that's really weird. Why are you afraid of that? And it like, I went through it with him, and it's like we just could not address the thought patterns I had that made me afraid. It just, we couldn't decondition my response. We tried for about a year straight, and it just didn't work. So I was like, okay, I feel exactly the same about my fear of death. We've been trying for a year straight. This guy isn't the one for me. And to be honest, I haven't tried therapy since then because I think I was making it worse. I had so much anxiety in that year, and that could just be coincidence. It could have been because, oh, it was my 21st birthday, and I was really thinking about my fear of death. But I was truly fucking afraid. Like, that was the year I feared it the most. I was more afraid of death than ever during my 21st year of life. I'm 26 now, and these last 5 years have been really brutal. I've had so many midlife crises, and every single year I'm just so anxious about when is death coming? When is it? Just doesn't feel like there's a point to anything, because if everything just ends, like, and everything just fades to black, what was even the point? Because I won't even exist anymore. I won't have my memories. My memories won't exist. There will be nothing that shows that I even existed. What's the point of all of this if in 1 million years, the fact that we existed is gone? There's no trace. There's no memory of us. Is it just to live in the now? Because if it's just to live in the now, why not just live a hedonistic life and just focus on maximizing your pleasure? That's really what I think. I'm like, because I could die tomorrow, why not just max my pleasures today? And my goal is always to focus on maximizing pleasure. That's how it feels, because, like, you could die any day, bro. The most dangerous thing we do on a daily basis is drive cars, and we could die in a car crash any day. That's just a fact. I really wish I wasn't born with this fear, because it feels like I'm powerless to do anything about this fear. It feels like a curse that there is nothing you could do about. When you're afraid to die, what can you do about that fear? I don't think you can do anything except accept it. And I don't want to accept it. I want to live. One day, all of this is going to be gone. Fucking sucks. And we all just seem to accept that fact and not really care at all. You know, I have noticed positives about the fact that I have this crippling fear, because I had always thought, like, if I'm so afraid of death, it has to have some kind of scientific benefits, right? And, you know, being so afraid of dying means you're going to be really focused on things you need to do to survive. My crippling fear of death has made me not hold grudges, for example. I don't allow my anger to control me to make long-term decisions, because I don't want to live with regrets. It's another thing my fear of death has helped me with. I try to take more risks in life because I don't want to die regretting indecision. But, I mean, any benefits that I could come up with for my fear of death do not make up for all the downsides. I think this might be the worst fear of anything that even could exist. And, like, my fear of death is so extreme that when I talk to people about it, I often say I would have rather just not existed in the first place. Because if I never existed, I could have never experienced all the suffering that the fear of re-entering unexistence brings about. I don't blame my dad, by the way, and I'm not mad at my dad. I think even if my dad didn't tell me about death that day, I think I would have just eventually developed that belief myself. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe he did instill that fear in me. That's my first memory, though, of my fear of death. And it just got worse and worse after I died. When I was young, it's almost like I convinced myself, oh, I'm immortal because death is so far away. I don't even need to think about it. But as I get older and older and older, it creeps closer and closer and closer. And the uncertainty of it just puts me in a perpetual state of anxiety. Because any day you could just die. I could die right now. A nuke could be dropped on my location. A stray bullet can come through and just shoot me in the head. I mean, a way of dying that's instantaneous would most likely be best, but man, it sucks. Sucks. I really wish I didn't have this fear, or at least I wish that it wasn't so alienating. Like, if I could be afraid with people, I guess it would be better, but it's so much worse to feel like alone. Like you're the only one suffering through a certain issue. Sucks.